I'm back again. And today I want to talk about a conversation I had over the weekend. Had a conversation regarding Iowa versus or actually specifically Iowa City versus other areas where I've done business as a realtor. Um, I actually got my start in Iowa City back in 1995 and sold homes here in this area for about 6 years. And then I went to Hawaii. Things were good here. And I was expecting a child and I needed another home anyway. And we noticed that the prices for homes on the Big Island of Hawaii and Iowa City were approximately the same price at that time, at least in the Hilo area, not in the Kona area, but in Hilo, they were relatively competitive. So I gave my wife the option. Do you want to buy a house here in Iowa City, or would you like to move to Hawaii? Because I feel like I could sell houses in Hawaii or Iowa. It doesn't make any difference to my business, probably. Um, but it did. I expected that all things would be relatively similar. And the truth is that Iowa City is a very special housing market. Um, it's special for a number of reasons. And I wanted to get into that here today because if you are thinking about investing in real estate and renting, um, this is kind of a paradise for that kind of business. We have a very transient population. The university and the hospital are two of the largest employers in the state of Iowa, and there's quite a bit of coming and going from the university and from the hospital. A lot of nurses are here temporarily, but they end up staying for a very long time, even though it's temporary. Uh, Sometimes they live in hotels, sometimes they rent a place, sometimes they may even buy a place. But just by and large, there's a lot of people coming and going from Iowa City. So there is always kind of a market out there. It's resilient when there's peaks and lows throughout the country. I experienced that to the extreme out in Hawaii. I was in the busiest market and the most dead market that I've ever been in out in Hawaii. Things were ridiculous for a little while with the pace of sales. This was in the early 2000s after 9/11. It was a little slow after 9/11, but then it started picking up, and then it really took off. Donald Trump went on the Oprah Winfrey show in the early 2000s and told everybody that they should invest in the Puna district of Hawaii, which was just south of Hilo, is south of Hilo, and it was basically in my zone. So we had a lot of people moving from California who sold all of their belongings because they would look on Realtor.com and they could see that the houses that were similar to theirs were about a quarter of the price of what they were paying out in California. So they were able to sell everything and pay cash for a house and buy all new furniture, buy new cars. They wouldn't move anything. They get all new stuff, sell everything in California, come out to Hawaii, and when there were so many people paying cash, there were no banks involved. There were no appraisers involved. And we had competing bids. I was meeting with people and I would show them, half a dozen properties in one day. And I told them, you need to make a decision now which one you want if you're going to get anything. And there were times where they didn't get anything, which is very frustrating if you're coming, from the East Coast of the United States out to Hawaii to buy something and you leave empty-handed. But I would tell them at one point, it was like, you got to offer full price. And then it was, well, you have to offer full price and it cannot be contingent to any loan. Are you getting a mortgage? Oh, well, they're going to reject it because it's cash only these days. Well, that's not fair, is it? Because some people need a mortgage. Well, but the sellers have all these cash offers they're looking for. So if you have a mortgage, forget it. You're not even gonna get a good look from these people. And then it was, no mortgage, no appraisal, no inspections, no contingencies at all, as is purchases, and very quick closings. Just enough time to get the paperwork done, and boom, it's sold and closed. So it was definitely a seller's market, and we would have competing offers the very night that the property was listed, and we were going to accept one of them. We would notify all the parties that I've got multiple offers again on this thing. So when I had the buyers, I was actually instructing them at first, we need to go over full price just to get the attraction of the sellers, because there's other people offering full price. So we're going to come in $1,000 or $2,000 over. Well, all the agents in the market started doing that. So that I was actually suggesting to people $5,000 over. Well, then all of a sudden the rest of the market was also doing that. I was at one point telling people, we got to come in $7,000 over asking price. $7,000 over asking price, because there's going to be somebody there with a full price. There's going to be somebody there with 2,000 or 3,000, maybe even 5,000 over, and there might be one person that's getting the advice from an agent who says, no, there's going to be 5,000. Let's go with 6. We're going to need to be on the safe side of things and offer $7,000 more than asking price. No contingencies, no loans. And if they found out that there was a loan and you just didn't make it subject to that loan, they were mad, because they were like, no, this is a cash offer. You have to have cash. This is a loan. It would blow the transaction, because it was kind of a dishonest position. I didn't do that, but there was definitely situations in the market where people were finding out in the transaction that they didn't get their loan approved, and it wasn't even subject to a loan. There were no contingencies. So how do you resolve that? Well, you have a non-performance issue. That could be you're going to lose your earnest money, probably. It's probably going to end up going to court, potentially. It's a mess. You don't want that kind of stuff. So the highs and lows that we have in the market nationally, Iowa, since we have some of the lowest property values in the country, it's insulated from those peaks and lows that you see in other markets. So if you need something that's more dependable, steady, Iowa is definitely a very stable market. Iowa City especially. You get a certain radius away from the hospital or the university, which are basically the same, then you're looking at a lot of stability. What we're seeing out around Iowa right now is farmers are getting hit really hard because of tariffs and disappearing markets, and I don't know. We can't really base a lot of historical performance in the market and predict that it's going to happen just like that, because there are extenuating circumstances out there in the market that make it very different than years past. However, we still have some of the lowest property values in the country, and it shouldn't be that turbulent. One of the other things is, when I was in Hawaii, there are many properties that are really beat up. The salt air is very corrosive to all the metals in the property. If you've got a sliding glass door and a metal track, it's corroded, and it scratches and grinds as it's not a very smooth, quiet operation. People know when you walk through a home and the hinge on the bedroom door squeaks, they may not say it out loud, but they think, oh, this house needs maintenance. So I would get a lot of people that would come out to Hawaii and they would take a look at what they would get in their price range, and they're like, oh, I'm not really happy with what my options are. And those people would they would go home very disappointed because they expected to get a house that they would be happy living in, and they would determine that this was just outside of their price range. So the inventory is not so good in Hawaii for the price. A lot of the areas. We built a home out there, so we had a pretty nice home. But the inventory here in Iowa City, there's a lot of new construction, and there's a lot of old homes that are just adorable. So I would say that the inventory of homes that we have here in Hawaii are above average, especially if you go around other towns throughout Iowa. They are very distressed. Main Street, small town Main Street, USA is struggling. And throughout Iowa, many of these small towns, you can tell they are economically stressed. And Iowa City is thriving. In the middle of all of that, it's thriving. But you just go a little south of Iowa City to a town like Washington or Columbus Junction. It's a whole different world. We're honestly, sometimes I look at some of these towns and we're on the verge of third world status in some of these towns. It's really, really sad. In some towns like Ottumwa, it almost looks like a bomb went off because there's old homes. They're just beat up and shutters are hanging diagonal, and windows don't have glass in them. They're boarded up. That's not a good look for a town. That's it looks like a slum, not a small town. And we're seeing that across the state, which is very, very troubling. Here in Iowa City, we have really good property. It maintains its value, and there's a constant demand for it. So there is an interest in maintaining the property and keeping the property nice so that it's attractive to renters. It's also a competitive market for rentals. So again, the property owners have incentive to maintain the property, keep it nice so that they can get it rented. Let's see. One of the other factors involved was I was in Des Moines and did real estate in Des Moines, sold some property out there. And one of the bad things about Des Moines, they have great inventory, a lot of new properties, a lot of very cute old properties. There's a lot of bad properties as well, but there's a much better mix and good properties available out there. Probably the hardest, one of the things I didn't like most about the Des Moines market was the number of properties. I'd never been in a market where you had so many options for home. And where you come to Iowa City, you might find 20, 30 properties in your price range, pretty typically. Not a huge price range. You'd go out to Hawaii, it was about the same, maybe even just a little bit less. There weren't that many homes to choose from. Out in Des Moines, you can have like 80 to 150 matches in a price range, and it's so hard to pick one. It's a little overwhelming. And as a realtor, if there's going to be like 300 listings around, $300,000 or whatever, is it my duty to show you all of those? Do you want to see all of those? How am I going to pick out which one is the right one for you? Sometimes it's a little tough to make the best match. And again, it's just overwhelming, and I think it's harder for buyers to make those decisions. There's also not as much turnover in Des Moines. It's a much more stable community, not as transient. People are there for the long term, although I had noticed, I grew up in Des Moines. People didn't usually move to Des Moines when I was growing up. I remember being in elementary school, and there'd be a new kid in class, and they'd say, I'm from New York. And we would all be like, New York? Wow. Well, what did your parents move to Iowa for? Like, we could not figure it out. This is before insurance became a big thing in Des Moines. It was an agricultural state. So, what are these people doing moving to Des Moines? We were just fascinated. It just was mind-boggling to us. But now Des Moines has become an insurance capital of the country, and a lot of the major insurance carriers are headquartered in Des Moines right now. So there's a lot of people coming in from out of state to work in Des Moines, and I lived in Colorado for a little while too, and the people are very nativist. They really don't like people from outside the state moving out there. Here, people are a little bit more welcoming, but in Des Moines, you start to see the same native stickers that you see out in Colorado. You'll see the Colorado shape and maybe the symbol, and then it'll say like native on there so that people know that you were actually born there and you belong there. I started seeing native stickers with the shape of Iowa on it, so that people could know that you were born in Iowa, and that's really strange to me. Never saw that before, but I did notice I worked for a carrier in Des Moines, insurance carrier in Des Moines, and they had hired a guy from Kentucky, and it occurred to me that there was a lot of people from that area of the country working in our company, and it was almost like we were recruiting people from that area of the country, but they were just, the coal industry was sagging, and these people were looking for work, so they're migrating out of really impoverished areas of the country and moving to Des Moines, and it's beautiful compared to, the Appalachian Mountains that they might be doing moonshine or something up there. I don't know, but I really realized in Des Moines that people were starting to like in Hawaii. I noticed that a lot of people were not from there. People learn how to drive differently in different parts of the country, and in Des Moines, it was a very polite area of the country, so you don't have a lot of people edging you out on the freeway or cutting you off and honking and stuff like that. But nowadays, you start to see these behaviors that you didn't see around Des Moines, driving behaviors that are obviously coming from, California or Texas. Texas people, oh my gosh, slow down. We have slower speed limits in the state, and I know the speed limit in Texas is higher than what we have, and you guys completely ignore that and drive 90 to 100 miles an hour. Anyway, please don't do that here. We don't drive that fast here. It's dangerous. So basically, in short, let me wrap it up here. The market in Iowa City has fantastic advantages. We have a stable market where you don't expect great appreciation, but you know that the floor is a lot safer. You're not going to get the dips. I experienced dips out in Hawaii that were, I still feel like I'm recovering from those dips, to be honest with you. I lost over $100,000 on a property when I sold it. So you don't want to go through that. It's no fun. It's no fun at all. So here, having that safety of the floor is very important. There's enough turnover, steady demand, which also keeps the prices steady. There's limited good inventory, which makes sure that your property does stand out a little bit better. Just there's so many good things about the real estate market in Hawaii compared to other places in the country, and unless you really experience those other markets, you can't appreciate how good it is here in Hawaii, in Iowa, but in Iowa City specifically. But Iowa City is incredibly special, and of the three places I've sold property, this is definitely my favorite. Hawaii has a lot of upsides. When you're off the clock, you can really enjoy yourself. But it's hard to live out there, for various reasons, not just because of the real estate market, but you're so isolated here. We're not too far away from Chicago, not too far away from Minneapolis. I went to Omaha recently. You can move around the country pretty well from this area, and it's just a nice little oasis in the state that has so many good things to offer. That we have culture here, real culture, the art museums, the symphonies at Hancher, the plays, you know, the sports. It's probably the most unique place in Iowa. Ames is probably getting closer to us in those respects, but Iowa is the traditional granddaddy in the state. It's just so special that I think you're gonna like it. If you're new to the area, I think you're gonna really appreciate these things after after so long. But if you're looking at investing in this area, I think you'll feel a level of comfort with the fact that the market is that stable, and that you're going to always have the ability to rent to somebody out here. So a lot of good things about Iowa City, and I love being here. So give me a call, folks. If you need to buy or sell property, I'd love to help you out.